Hello, in today's video, we're going to be replacing our rear wheel bearing hub assembly on this 2001 Honda Odyssey. Starting with using a 19mm to loosen and remove all 5 lug nuts after having it lifted and supported. And once we get them all off, we can remove the wheel. And the reason I'm going to be replacing this bearing is that we're getting a noise which sounds like a loud humming or bees buzzing coming from this wheel. And yes, I did look for bees first. Just kidding. And these noises would get louder the faster it was going, and on turns, it would make a crackly noise, which is when more load is being put on these bearings, all which are indicative of a bad wheel bearing. Right now as I spin it, all we end up getting is a slight brake drag noise, which isn't our sound. Maybe with the brake drum off it'll be different. Nevertheless, to remove our brake drum, we can use an 8mm by 1.25 threaded bolt, alternating back and forth, to pop it off. Once we get it out far enough, we should just be able to pull off the drum. Now to remove the actual hub assembly, we'll need to pop out the center cover first, using a chisel. We're going to want to place our chisel right here in the middle of both, so it separates the cover from the hub. With our chisel in place, let's tap on the chisel with a hammer so it begins to pop out the cover, and once we get it going, we go around it till it separates all around. Now that we got it separated, let's pry the remainder off with a screwdriver or a pry bar. Before attempting to remove the spindle nut, we'll need to lift the staked area on the nut, which is done to keep it from loosening up. So using the same chisel, we'll try to tap it back up, or you can use anything that can get the notch above the spindle threads and allow it to loosen. Now that we got it lifted out, let's loosen the nut using a 36mm socket. I'm using this impact, but a breaker bar works really good as well. With the nut off, let's pull out the hub. It may be a little difficult to get off. Well, actually, I stand corrected. This one came off pretty easy, but it did leave the bearing race on the spindle. But we should be able to pry it out using a pry bar. And yes, there it goes. And it should pull out by hand the rest of the way. To prepare for our new hub, we'll wipe down the spindle shaft, cleaning off any dirt, rust, or old grease to get it as clean as possible. After cleaning it, we'll want to feel for any burrs or nicks that can make it difficult to get the new one back on. And if it does have any nicks or burrs, you'll want to file them down so they're even with the spindle. Or if not, as a final wipe down, to remove any rust it has on this particular spindle, I like to use some gray Scotch-Brite just to make sure it's perfectly smooth. Then one final wipe down before adding a little bit of brake lubricant or bearing grease to the spindle. All these steps in preparing the spindle beforehand should help make installing the new hub a lot easier. And here we got our new replacement hub next to our old hub that we just removed. And when I spin this old one, you can kind of feel some grit in there, and more than likely that's the reason for our noise. Before installing it though, you will want to compare them just to make sure they're similar, which they're pretty much the same other than some small differences which won't affect it. Well, let's now slide in our new hub, making sure that it slides in completely. Which this one, as you can tell, slid in pretty easy. Now for the spindle nut, it is recommended to replace this nut, but I am guilty of reusing a few of them as long as the threads were still in good shape. But if yours looks anything like this one, you'll definitely want to replace it. You can notice that some of the inner threads are damaged, and that will surely damage the spindle threads, and it is not worth the risk. With our new spindle nut in hand, let's now thread it on using our fingers till it bottoms out. Now using the socket on the torque wrench, we can torque it down to 181 foot-pounds. Give it a little spin to make sure that it spins smoothly, which it does. Now we can stake it down with the chisel and the hammer so this nut will not loosen under vibration. We just want this corner to come down far enough so it will keep it from rotating. Now to get this cover on, you'll want to set it up so it starts evenly, then I use a rubber mallet to tap it in. Using a regular hammer may ding it, so I avoid using one, but if you tap it lightly enough, it may be okay. But once it's completely in, I just tap it all around on the edge with a regular hammer to make sure. Now all that's left is reinstalling the brake drum, followed by the wheel. With the wheel and the lug nuts on, torque them down to 80 foot-pounds, but me personally I go to 90 because 80 feels a little low. Torquing them down in a star pattern so the wheel seats evenly. Well, that just about does it for this video. I hope you were able to find this video helpful and informative. If so, please click that thumbs up button to support my video and my channel. And please subscribe if you haven't done so.